today I'm in studio joined by Martin Sajon, who is the CEO and co-founder of Neuralys. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
I don't know why I had so much trouble pronouncing that. Neuralys. I mean, I'm assuming you got it from Neuralys, right? Like, what was the thought behind the name?
Basically, we are not working with machine learning yet, but we are planning on basically having machine learning in the future.
Okay.
And neural comes from neural networks.
Got
then it. The SIS, it's basically come from information security, but we didn't like the I and we changed it for a Y.
Got it. No, it makes sense. I think it's a good name. I don't know why I'm not able.
Everyone has the same problem, so
really,
don't worry about
okay.
it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Maybe we should change our name to Neuralys.
Maybe. I think that maybe. But let's start from the beginning, man. So,
Absolutely.
You were born and raised in Argentina,
yes.
right? Was it Buenos Aires or somewhere?
Buenos Aires.
Okay. And so what was growing up there like?
So when I was a little kid, Buenos Aires was a completely different place than it is right now. Actually, it came out as one of the coolest cities in the world a few weeks ago.
Okay.
So it's a really cool place. It was really calm. Basically, the economy was pretty different. Then the security also was pretty different. I could play in the street without being robbed. The neighborhood in which I was raised, it's really calm. My parents actually have been living there for more than 40 years in the same house. They still live there, so it's a really cool place, actually.
How often do you go back?
I would say every year, because my parents visit me a lot. And you know that being an entrepreneur is not easy, so I don't get that much time to visit home. But
right.
Yeah, probably next year.
Okay. And why? So what about your upbringing or your experience growing up kind of set you in the direction of being an entrepreneur? Because I know that like Argentina, from what I understand, like the kind of mainstream conversation isn't that capitalism friendly, right? So like, well, what put you on that path?
Argentina went through different governments and the economy changed a lot, but still the Argentina has a spark to look for the fifth leg in the cat, because we face adversity every now and then. So everyone basically looks for new things. Me as a kid, when I was 5 years old, I remember my parents inviting people around to have dinner in our house. So I would serve them and I would say, okay, yeah, I'm serving you, but now you need to pay me. So I got like $1 for serving them. And I think that was kind of the start in entrepreneurship. I was a pretty interesting kid. I was really shy. And that basically took me to start building stuff, whether it's electronic stuff or speakers, skateboards, like self-made skateboards. So, well, I think those were the first steps in entrepreneurship. Then my dad told me how to build computers. So I took that as a business. So basically, I was sourcing parts from my brother that was working in the company that imported all the parts. And then I was selling those computers that I built to my basically parents' friends. So basically, I think that was my first business when I was a kid. Like I was 7 years old.
Yeah, for sure. So when did you first come across the internet?
So my dad, he's 75 years old, and he's pretty geeky, to put it in a way.
Yes.
He was one of the first internet users in Argentina. One of the first Mac users in Argentina.
How do you know that?
Because basically I wanted to build a Mac museum, and I basically contacted Apple to see what was the first store that sold Apple in Argentina. Contacted the guy that was the CEO, and he told me your dad was my third customer. So
wow, amazing. Okay.
Yeah. So I was exposed to computer when I was a kid. I always loved computers. So I think when the dial-up modem basically showed up, I was like, oh yeah, I want to start playing around with this. And I remember my parents like trying to get out of the phone, and I was connected to the internet, so they will drop my connection, and then they will be, hey Martin, just get off the internet.
I think every technical co-founder, every technical founder has those stories of like, their first time using a computer, first time like back in the dial-up days of
Oh yeah, and I have a pretty cool story on that I think it was my first hacking engagement per se. Basically, my mother was using her bank account, so when basically home banking started making its appearance. And I said, hey, this is not secure at all. So the home banking is just asking for your ID and for number password. So if it's that easy, I can transfer money from your account to another account. And I started investigating. So I'm a self-taught hacker. I was kicked out of 5 different schools. So it was pretty interesting.
In Argentina?
Yeah, I went around to 15 schools. They kicked me out of 5.
Why? What were you doing? Were you just hacking into things?
No, not exactly. I'm an ethical hacker on that side.
Yeah, okay.
That's a good part.
That's good. That's good.
No, I didn't like school. I have a really hard time. I was the bully kid in school also. So I didn't like to go to school. I didn't like to study what they were trying to teach me. I was just reading books by myself at home, trying to learn stuff that I was interested in. Basically I learned how to write a keylogger. That it's basically a file that copies all your keystrokes in your keyboard. So that's how I got my mom's ID and password.
Jeez, okay.
Logged into her bank account and I said, hey, mom, I hacked you. She freaked out, obviously.
Yes.
But then she was like, but I'm going to transfer money from your account to dad's account. Just to prove that I can hack the home banking.
Right.
And you, obviously. So I basically did. And I transferred like $1 from my mom's account to my dad's account. But the cool part is that was like the first appearing of keylogger. And I basically embed that keylogger into an image. That's a process called steganography. So basically, it was kind of a phishing of now, but in 1999, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
So basically, I sent an email with a phishing link. So when she downloaded the picture, it executed the file. So I was getting on my email all the passwords.
So you were just growing up hacking your mom all the time?
Yes. Basically.
That's
so they
really
said,
funny.
oh, this kid has a talent doing this.
Yes.
And my dad sent me on.
So when did that happen? When did it switch from this is a nuisance, like stop doing this to us, to okay, there's opportunity here?
I was around 13 years old.
Okay.
And then basically sent me to electronic classes on how to build electronic boards.
Yes.
And then my dad told me, oh, you have a really cool talent in this. And he sent me to learn basically networking. So when I was 15 years old, I took some Cisco classes. I got my certifications in operating Cisco gear. And I found out that I could sell those services. Being 15 years old and working from home on my free time.
Yeah.
I was still in school and I was doing pretty bad in school. So I started selling those services to companies and I found out something pretty interesting. So multinationals that are extremely big, I'm talking about like Avery Dennison or those really big multinationals, basically hire services to companies like Tata in India, right? But Tata outsources to another company called Reliance Globalcom.
Okay.
Then that company outsources to a third one in the Czech Republic. And then that company in the Czech Republic outsources again to guys like me all over the world. So I found that process. I started selling those services to those guys, working from home, maintaining networking gear. So that basically became my first company.
Wow. That's interesting. Wow. So something that a parallel that I see across many successful entrepreneurs is that they all started by selling personal services.
Yes.
Because that's, when you have no money, like, what else do you have besides your own thoughts to sell, right? And so I think that's a theme that I see play out a lot across most of the successful entrepreneurs that I know. That's where they all started, unless they come from money, which most successful entrepreneurs don't come from money.
No.
Because there's a lot of grit and drive that's needed that when you grow up in this kind of padded ecosystem, you don't develop that internally. So when did the kind of computer stuff and the modern day startup world for you kind of start to come together with your latest company?
Great question. So I had other startups when I was 18 years old. I said, okay, I really like security, so let's take it to the next level. I started a company called ISNS. That was my previous security consultancy company. And I started selling different products, whether it was secure communications, secure data transportation in highly secure pen drives. And then I started selling Qualys, one of the biggest vulnerability scanners in the world. So that was like my first steps in building a company itself. Obviously, we were selling penetration testing services. That's basically ethical hacking services. So we started. I started on that. I got a co-founder to join me later. That's another cool story. But yeah, I started selling that, and I said, okay, yeah, this is really cool. So the way in which ISNS transitioned and moved on to Neuralys, to what Neuralys is today, it's basically I met Diego, my co-founder, and when we met, we were like, we should be working together because I'm hiring services from you, you're hiring services from me, and we should be working together instead of just hiring each other, right? And Diego told me, yeah, I'm thinking about building this. So that was like, the company wasn't even called Neuralys, it was called Vulnerability Insight. We were trying to build another vulnerability scanner, but we said, yeah, this is not going to work. So basically we started shuffling ideas. Basically it took us around 1.5 years till we ended up in what Neuralys is actually today. So it was really fun. When he started talking about the idea, I knew that this was the right way to go, because when we finished with the idea of what Neuralys is today, we saw that it's a huge problem worldwide, around any company. So the problem that we solve as Neuralys, and that's what we found out of basically coming from all the pen test engagements in our years as consultants, was that every time we were delivering a report to a customer, we were delivering them a new problem, because we were finding things that their systems weren't finding, and now they need to fix all the things we found, because many times we found critical information in those systems. So we said, when it comes down to basically mitigating those risks, they're just sending those reports over email, or asking for an Excel spreadsheet and sending that also over email. When they assign this to the IT guys that are not technical, they waste a huge amount of time trying to actually see how it needs to be fixed, because they are not technical, right?
Right.
So we said, why don't we build a collaboration platform that we can bring everyone together in just one place and remove the complexity out of the equation? So we are showing you a really easy to use dashboard where you can join basically different teams, whether it's security, IT, the C-level itself, or risk and compliance. They can all work together in the mitigation. So if we basically enable a collaborative approach and everyone can work together, they are way more effective, because you know that right now there's millions of security positions unfilled, and there's a huge lack of security professionals. So if we enable the correct information and the correct way of working to different people, we can actually fight that lack of professionals.
Right. Did you start this?
Started in Buenos Aires.
And when did you come to the US?
So I came to the US basically for the Peace Tech Accelerator last year.
Okay. Got
That was like my first step in Washington DC startup ecosystem. So then when I finished, I went back to Argentina, but basically my girlfriend was here and we got married 4 months ago. So
Oh, congrats.
thank you. She said like, yes, you need to get back fast. And when I came back, we basically said we should get married. When you know. So
Yeah.
you know how it goes. And then, well, I got married and I'm living here full time since 6 months ago, approximately.
All right. Well, it's great to have you here.
No, thank you.
And so when you were first starting, I mean, I'd be curious to know kind of your story navigating the Buenos Aires ecosystem, because, I know through doing this podcast that in markets like Latin America, like Africa, like Southeast Asia, there's not a lot of money.
Nope.
There's not a lot of money. And so, like, what was your experience in the early days?
So it was a bumpy ride.
Okay.
It was fun, but I learned a lot on that experience. So obviously we were building our product, basically bootstrapping by selling services. On those services, we invested right back in the company to develop the platform itself and basically hire a part-time developer. And we said, we should look for funds. We obviously read about Silicon Valley heard about Silicon Valley and how the startup ecosystem is growing a lot around the world. But in Argentina, a couple of years ago, that basically startup ecosystem wasn't thriving. So we said we went to Argentinian government and said, hey guys, we want to raise money, right? And they said, okay, yeah, sounds good. You should go to Silicon Valley because we don't have many VCs right here. And the ones we have are really later stage, like series, let's say B on, because we have a couple of unicorns in Argentina. And we said, okay, yeah, I'm taking basically the first plane to Silicon Valley. Got to Silicon Valley. They made a few introductions over there, but I started knocking on doors, and no one advised me that I shouldn't be doing that. So I started knocking on doors, and they were like, hey, what are you doing here? You don't come knocking on doors. You ask for introductions. Second, you don't come asking for money. You come asking for advice, and we might give you money.
Yeah.
And then, like, for us to invest in you, you need to be in Silicon Valley and have at least 1 million traction. This was just an idea.
Yeah.
So basically went home with my head down and said, oh yeah, this didn't work. So went back to Argentinian government and said, hey guys, you got it all wrong. This is not the way it goes. This is the Silicon Valley dream that everyone talks about, but it's not the reality itself. So basically went back and tried to work on another strategy. That took us to Coalition Conference in New Orleans back in 2017.
Oh wow, 2017. Okay, I was actually there.
Oh really?
Yeah.
So we were
there.
part of the alpha startups. That was like the earliest stage startups.
Yes.
We had a 1 per 1 meter stand over there for one day. So what I did is basically, having learned about Silicon Valley and what they told me, I grabbed the phone app and started sending to investors and potential customers in the future. Obviously, we were too early.
Just like within the Collision app.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Just within the Collision app, I started sending to investors, hey guys, do you have 5 minutes for a coffee? And many of them replied, actually. So interestingly, and that's basically the main reason why I ended up in DC, I met a guy, an investor called Matt from TDF Ventures. And obviously they are more of a later stage one, but I pitched him my idea and he said, well, we are obviously later stage, but I can introduce you to someone running an accelerator called Mach 37. That at the time was a guy called Rick. We applied, ended up kind of being selected. Rick left. But I reached out back to Rick beginning of 2018. And Rick introduced us to Mike Ravenscroft, that at the time was running Mag again.
Got it.
Applied again, ended up being selected again, and Mike left. But
Wow.
to our luck, Mike left to Peace Tech.
Oh, I see. Because that makes sense. Yes. Got it.
So he called us in and said, hey guys, I know I left and the cohort fell, but I got a spot for you here. So basically that's how we ended up here at the USIP.
Awesome. Well, I mean, that's how. So we first connected. When was that? The Verizon Alley co-working space. Yep. When was that? That was probably summer 2018.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was the pitch to a pretty cool crowd.
Yeah.
One of our first pitch within the Washington D.C. area. So it was pretty cool.
Cool. And so when's the last time you were back in Buenos Aires?
So at the end of that program, I think it ended in around November. No, between September and October. I don't really remember. So we finished the program, stayed here for 2 more weeks, and then I went back to Argentina. Stayed there like for 3 months. My girlfriend came in to spend New Year's Eve then, and then around the end of January I came back here basically to.
I mean, and so the reason I asked is because I'm just curious to hear, your thoughts on how the Buenos Aires ecosystem has evolved since you first started.
It's interesting because now that we got the investment 3 months ago, actually one of our investors is a VC from Argentina, so from Buenos Aires, and in this, I would say, last 2 years, the ecosystem grew a lot, and now I could say that it's pretty solid, but obviously it's really good to see that, because when I started, obviously they gave me the wrong directions. No one was investing, and I remember one of the first investors I pitched in Argentina. Cyber was not its focus, but he said, okay, yeah, I lost the train trying to invest in a company that basically works in cybersecurity for ERP security. Basically, the name is Synopsys. And I started pitching. Obviously, we were looking at for, I would say, 1 million. That was a crazy idea.
1 million. That was your seed round?
No, we raised 250,000. So
Okay.
imagine.
Yes.
But he was like, "You're worth shit," and I was like, "Okay, thank you. We'll be back eventually."
Yeah.
And it's fun because he lost his second train right now. But yeah, basically we took that experience and all the fundraising, trying to fundraise in Argentina and Silicon Valley. Everyone says that traction is king, right? So we started building the product, we started building traction, and that's what it took us to hire, basically to raise this round right now. And one of my mentors, Mike Janke, co-founder of Data Tribe, he said, when I met him, he said, basically, messaging is everything. So we start changing our messaging, testing our messaging. We keep on doing that, actually. But yeah, messaging is king.
Yeah. And what market do you focus on? So I have this theory that I've been developing over the past couple months that my good friend Mark Busiku, he's Haitian, and he started Haiti's first kind of incubator co-working space called the Bunge. And Haiti had some riots last week, and the co-working space got completely destroyed.
That's so sad.
And so it's a very sad situation. I'm very sad for Mark, but that got me thinking and kind of started developing this thesis of countries that have a GDP, probably 15 billion is a good cutoff for GDP level. If countries with GDP 15 billion or below want a thriving startup ecosystem locally, then they need to focus their resources on programs for diasporans to build companies in the US, in Europe, in China that are committed to reinvesting some of that wealth from an exit back home. Because a market like Haiti, I think their GDP is maybe 8.2 billion. It's not a big enough of a local market to sustain an ecosystem. You can't build a venture-backed company in a climate like that.
Yep.
And so for you, I know Argentina obviously is a little bit bigger and more established market than Haiti is, but like where do you focus your growth on?
So our growth is focused right now. Obviously, we have lots of connections to Latin America, so the idea is to keep growing in Latin America. Our focus for this year's ending, but for 2020, it's growing the U.S. market. And once we have traction here, the idea is to start growing all over the world if possible. And it's pretty interesting what you mentioned because my wife is Puerto Rican. So I was talking to her actually 2 days ago about Puerto Rico, and I was like, hey, I haven't seen much entrepreneurship or like internal economic growth in Puerto Rico itself. And obviously, you know that Hurricane Maria destroyed the island. And interestingly, yesterday I was reading Forbes magazine, and Orlando Bravo, that it's the owner and CEO of Thoma Bravo, one of the biggest PE firms, private equity firms in the world. He's investing 100 million on a nonprofit, basically to promote entrepreneurship and economic growth in a really small island that its GDP it's not high enough. So, and I've been there and it's pretty green. So agriculture could be really exploited in there. But entrepreneurship, it's hard. Not everyone it's made for that. And then,
I agree.
But if obviously there's a difference between made and, well, if you have it in your blood, or you want to basically train people to be entrepreneurs, obviously you said it, resources are scarce. So if you enable them the resources, people can actually do it. Yeah. It's hard. I'm not going to say no. It's lots of nights with no sleep, keep fighting. But as a person that faced adversity all his life, I always say that if you haven't faced adversity, you don't know your own strength. And people in Puerto Rico face huge adversity.
For sure.
So I can guarantee that they are great entrepreneurs.
Yeah. No, I mean, anyone who's an entrepreneur in a frontier market is a very tough. You have to be very tough. You have to be a very, very tough person to operate in those markets, because there are so many challenges on top of the normal challenges, you know, entrepreneurs here in the U.S. might face when they're building their company. And you know, I do believe that anyone could be an entrepreneur, but I also believe that there's a huge disconnect right now between how entrepreneurship and building a company is portrayed in the media and the reality, right?
Yes.
And there's, you know, as with everything, it's a duality. Like, there's a good and a bad thing about Shark Tank, right? Like, it's promoting entrepreneurship, and it is inspiring people to maybe take a leap that they wouldn't have otherwise. But at the same time, if you really think that, you know, and so on Shark Tank, there are people that will go there and they'll pitch, right? And their like off-camera story is like, if this doesn't work out, like, this is it. And it's like, that's ridiculous. You can't think like that. There's a lot of money out there, and it's all about relationship building. It's not just like you get your one shot and it's like American Idol, right? Like,
absolutely, yeah. And you just said something really important. I learned this, and it's one of the most interesting things I always try to transmit to people. I got here because of my network. So my main focus when I got back from my first trip to Silicon Valley was started building a really big network. So basically where I'm at today, it's thanks to the network I built.
right.
It's not because of me. It's not because of our technology or our team. It's because of the network I built helped a lot in the path. And I told you that we have an investor from Argentina, right? It's an Argentinian VC. I met him 4 years ago, and I basically tormented him saying, hey, you need to invest in us. This is good. So that's how I did up. Our investors in Silicon Valley, it's Plug and Play Ventures. Basically,
yeah, no Plug and Play.
This year, beginning of the year when I got here, went to RSA conference in San Francisco. So I met some people there. I went to several events to meet more people. I met one lady there that used to work in Plug and Play. She introduced me to another guy, and basically I started building the network inside Plug and Play till I got to one of my great investors, Rohit, that I have a really good personal relationship with him also, besides the investment stuff.
Right.
So basically it was the network I built. So network is always key. It can get you places.
Yeah. Well, I think network is key, but there's two pieces to it. The network can get you in the door, but you have to be good.
Yes.
Like, you know, whatever you're kind of selling or whatever you have has to be good, right? Otherwise you're actually going to burn the network, right?
Yeah.
So it's
don't burn your bullets.
Yes, exactly. And maybe it is important to, or not important, but maybe it's a good lesson for some entrepreneurs along their journey to burn some bridges in the early days, because you have to learn, right? You have to learn.
Yes.
And I'm sure, you know, you and myself in the early days of entrepreneurship, it's more ignorance than anything else, right?
Yes.
You do things. I didn't know what BCC was when I first, like, when I graduated college and so, like, you know, there's just a lot. Yeah, but let's talk about the cap table of so, like, the amount of investors that you have from Latin America versus like US. Like, what's
interestingly, we have just one VC from the US that it's Plug and Play.
Okay.
And then the rest of our investors are the RBC called Draper Cygnus. It's an Argentinian
That's great.
VC
Yeah.
by Team Draper. And the rest are angel investors from Argentina.
Okay. Congrats.
So,
that's
thank you.
awesome.
Yeah, it's really awesome, and it really makes me really proud that basically, as I told you, Argentina didn't have like an investment ecosystem, and seeing it grow, and then having investors from Argentina, that it's my home, it actually makes me really happy.
Yeah. I mean, I think first and foremost, it's important that you get the story of, you know, a successful Buenos Aires company that, you know, achieves an exit, whether it's an IPO or acquisition or whatever it may be. But the second most important thing is that there's actually local capital that's benefiting off of it, right? Because if that happens, that capital is much more likely to be recycled back into the ecosystem, back into new companies. That's why Estonia has such an amazing and thriving startup ecosystem, because Skype was a completely like Estonian team and Estonian investors. And so when Microsoft bought Skype, all that talent was recycled back into the ecosystem. All that knowledge and capital, everything was recycled back into the ecosystem. And so the result of that, from this last wave of startups has just been an explosion of startup activity in Estonia, all seeded by that, initial big win. And so that's fantastic. I'm very happy. I'm very happy.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Like for me as an entrepreneur, obviously, I got a lot of help. So now I'm trying to give back to the community. So in any way I can help, I'm happy to do so. And seeing other countries thrive on that entrepreneurship side, it's amazing because obviously we are being governed by all these huge corporations, and obviously if you see many countries, the GDP actually it's made by startups, and startups are the way to go because they bring new technologies, they bring new processes, they can change how corporations work because many times the startup founders come from those corporations learning basically the bad management, or it could be something that it's not working. So the way we build our company is by seeing that basically companies are buying multiple vulnerability analysis tools at the same time. They're using them at the same time, but they're disconnected with each other. So we said, okay, why don't we connect them in one platform, and we correlate all the data together, and then we enable that data to different people that it's not exactly technical. So that basically was part of our experience managing all these different products, selling them, using them. And that's what it took us to build Neuralys. So obviously, if you worked in Ernst & Young or Deloitte or working with, I saw that you had an interview with Andrew from Agromobile.
Yes.
So Andrew worked all around the world. I think I've never heard such cool stories as the ones Andrew have. I always say to him, he should write a book on those stories.
He should. He told me some fantastic stories after the interview that I was like, dude, you should have told us on camera about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say
like being shot at in Nigeria.
Exactly. Or getting their passports taken out, and yes, some the cool stories I've ever heard. But still, Andrew saw the big problem with the crops being just discarded. So as you can see, it's basically a common denominator that all the entrepreneurs saw a problem working in wherever they were working and try to solve that problem. So
yeah, for sure.
If we enable those entrepreneurs, I can guarantee you we can make this world a way better place than it is right now.
I agree, because every problem also insinuates that there's an opportunity on the other side of it if you can figure out how to solve it. I think what's most important for Latin America is for its corporates to, and they have somewhat, but to do a better job at serving as customers for startups, as starting corporate VCs, because historically Latin American companies haven't had competition. They've been mostly monopolies.
Yep.
But now with globalization, they're starting to feel some of the heat, right? And so they have really no choice of kind of being good players in the local ecosystem, supporting startups. They'll get more talent from that. They'll get companies that they can acquire to actually supplement their business models.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought something that it's really interesting. Those corporations opening the doors to startups. I was in an Argentinian conference that was made in Georgetown. It was Masters Argentina. So it was pretty cool because they brought people from all over the US, Argentinians living in the US and studying here, to a conference, and they brought corporations from Argentina such as YPF, that's the biggest oil company in Argentina, and many other corporations. And it was a great opportunity to go to those guys, basically CEOs or C-level, and say, hey guys, everything's great. You're talking about entrepreneurship, you're talking about bringing back the talent that left Argentina, but still, I'm a startup, and if I try to reach you directly, that's never going to happen. So if you don't open doors to entrepreneurship and to present their products, it's never going to happen. So as of now, as of actually this year, YPF, it's opening its own corporate VC, so it's
Yeah.
amazing to see that happen, and many other corporations are doing the same. But still, it needs to grow a lot all over Latin America. And
That's indicative of another problem, which I've heard been called conference sluts, where you have people that just love to speak at conferences. They love to talk about how innovative they are. They love to use all the buzzwords. They might be doing something blockchain powered and VR with some drones in
And
there,
AI.
right? And AI and machine learning on the back end. But what are they actually doing, right? And so I think a lot of I think it seems I have an outsider's view. Obviously, I haven't operated in these markets, but it seems like it is changing, and it seems like the corporates are waking up to the fact that Silicon Valley money is coming in. There's a lot of Chinese money is coming in, and so they need to innovate and they need to move forward with the ecosystem, not adverse to it. But
Absolutely.
Martin, is there anything else that you wanted to tell the good people before we close out? So on the future of kind of your vision, where you're going.
So I always say one thing: never let your arms down. Keep fighting, because you're gonna get there. The tunnel, it's gonna get darker and darker, but you'll eventually start seeing the light. So if you want something, go for it. Don't be afraid of it. And I think that's one good part. And then on the Neuralys perspective, we are fighting again now in the U.S. market, in which I am someone from Argentina trying to get into the U.S. market, meeting lots of people and getting a lot of no's many times. You're too early, as every startup heard a lot of times, but still, you gotta keep fighting, and we'll be around. You'll hear for us eventually in the news, doing good things. So. Just keep fighting.
All right. Well, Martin, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.